What?
We're live. Hello, friends.
Welcome to Pressure Point Politics, the inaugural episode. We're super excited to be here.
We are, and we're very excited to bring this first episode. I think it's going to be something that's very relevant to events going on in the world now. Something that's really taken the media and taken a lot of the American public by storm, which is
The world in general. Right?
yeah, the Israel and Palestine conflict, as well as other issues that are important to Americans. In our interview with Mr. Nasser Beydoun, who is running for the Democratic nomination for the U.S. Senate seat in the state of Michigan, which will be an extremely important election for the presidential race, which went for Trump in 2016, then Biden in 2020, as well as the Senate seat, which will be an open seat for 2024.
And I guess just to lay some context, we met Mr. Beydoun at a campaign event for Barbara Lee. We got to hear her speak, which was really cool and compelling. And we met him at this event was held at a mosque in Irvine. And the event itself, there's a lot of levity there. We were so welcomed. Tons of people coming up, talking to us, asking about the podcast, and just taking a general interest, which was really cool. And, you know, it was also eye-opening for me as, you know, just a average American person. You know, I am not as connected to this conflict as some Americans are, right? And at this event, there's folks who had lost, you know, 10, 20 immediate family members to this conflict. Yeah, it was definitely like, I was glad to be there and participate and build that relationship. It was good.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that'll be that's a big topic that we discuss, and you'll see. And I think this was a conversation that took place a few months, months ago. So it's not necessarily, I mean, there haven't been necessarily super significant changes. I mean, the war was going on then. War still going.
Were coming out and saying that he was pretty much against
he was
state of the conflict and against where it were.
Or he was against specifically Netanyahu, the prime minister.
Netanyahu,
he didn't get. Yeah, my understanding is he wasn't super specific on what he. No, it was a seismic change.
I feel like the arena of public opinion has gradually shifted over time, and you know, obviously, there's still intense amount of support on both sides of this thing. But it was so interesting for us to have done this interview and just watching like all of this unfold. You know, the head of the Senate coming out and saying he's against the head of, you know, the Israeli government and their policy there was, you know, it's definitely pertinent.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why it was a focus of conversation, we talked about other areas as well, such as issues related to the economy, issues related to corruption in politics, other things. But the reason why the Israel war came up is because that has that plays a big role in the state of Michigan, where they have a significant Muslim population. And in the Democratic primary for president, there were over 100,000 uncommitted votes, where counties across the entire state, not just around Detroit or Dearborn, where there's a significant Muslim population, but across the state, rural areas, suburbs, there were quite a few people who voted non-committed because of their opposition to how the U.S. has been involved with when it comes to the war in Gaza with Israel. And that's not to say we're like necessarily taking a side with it, but that's kind of laying out a reality with one of the most important states politically for the 2024 election.
So what did you think of, what was your impression of the conversation? What was something that, yeah, I guess just start high level with your impression of our dialogue?
Yeah, I thought it was really enlightening. I think it's very interesting getting his perspective in particular, because I think something interesting about him is he's someone who is very pro-worker in the sense like he's very in support of labor unions, but at the same time he is a very industrious person who started his own business, I believe his own line of restaurants, and he's been in various business ventures, very successful. And I think it was a very interesting conversation with those issues, and I think particularly when talking about Israel, I think he brought a lot of knowledge from, I guess, his perspective that's more in defense of the Palestinian cause. But I think it was a very cordial, and I think it was and I enjoyed the conversation even about difficult topics or like very emotion-driving topics. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think what struck me the most, I kind of commented on it already, was just like he very much so sees the people of Gaza as his people, it felt like, right? And he's just very much so connected to the human costs, the death and suffering that is happening there. And I thought in America, I feel like we are very in touch with the Israeli side of things and very in touch with like that point of view. But it's just really, I felt empowered and grateful to be connected to the very large Arab American community in America, right? Like that there's a very large and rich cultural Arab American community, and they are, very, very connected to this conflict in similar ways as the Jewish people, obviously, and obviously very different ways as well. But just his emotional connection there and advocating for his people that, he throws around. He makes the claim, or the assertion that what's happening there is a genocide, right? And just hearing that perspective from somebody who is just so embedded in a part of that community, I thought was just really, really good for me here.
Yeah, no, I think that is spot on. And I guess one thing I want to emphasize, there might be some topics brought up that people might not agree with.
Yeah.
You might not agree. Yeah, we'll just give, I guess, do you want to start with just giving your
comment on one thing right there? Like he's not shy at all about asserting that what's happening over there is a genocide. And there's a insane human cost to what's happening. Obviously, like I think if you're listening to this podcast, you probably already know, but like we'll have to fact check this. You should fact check everything we say, but I think like 20,000 children. Is that?
Well, it's around 30,000 overall, with a lot of women and children.
With a lot of women and children, and there's around 30,000 casualties.
So yeah, in general.
So just and then there was 1,300 Israeli.
The 12 or 1,300, yeah, and like obviously, yeah, it's not on October 7th.
Death is death. But when somebody like Nasser looks at this conflict and sees, how many kids, and just how many people, innocent civilians, are dying in general, he cannot help but see that as a direct attack on his people and an attempt to eliminate them from, this patch of land, right? And I don't know, there's an Economist article that investigated and kind of like interrogated this idea of genocide with the Uyghurs, right? And what's happening with the Uyghurs, what has happened with the Uyghurs in China is terrible, 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 horrific crimes against humanity for sure. But the Economist concluded that, like, according to the Geneva Convention, it doesn't necessarily align with the definition of genocide. That doesn't necessarily reduce how bad it is. And the seriousness of the crimes that are being committed in that environment. And so I don't know, I'm not going to be somebody that's going to say that this is an instance of genocide, this is an instance of collective punishment, even though I think there are very compelling arguments for both of those. We are not endorsing necessarily those viewpoints, but they're out there, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think really the purpose of our podcast is to show what are the most important issues out there. And I think this issue is something that really has struck deep in the minds and hearts with a lot of Americans. And this does reflect a significant portion of the state of Michigan, which is, as we said before, is going to be very important for the election. And it's important to cover that because we're interested in finding out what issues matter most to people in the most important areas, and this is certainly one of those issues, particularly in the state of Michigan.
yeah, and we're heartbroken, by the loss of life on both sides. And I just think that Masters' viewpoint isn't necessarily one that you always get when you turn on American media, right? So we're excited to be able to share that with you. So
yeah. So with that being said, we hope you enjoy the episode.